John Scott here with Jonathan Acosta following day 2 of Bill's mandatory minicamp here. We told you yesterday, offense, Josh Allen, not as crisp as maybe we are accustomed to. They came back out the gate, especially early in a 7-on-7 portion, looking drastically better.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where the first day, Josh may be a little bit rusty from not having been on the field for a little bit. A lot of good life reasons to maybe be a little bit rusty. Certainly a lot more like the Josh Allen we're used to seeing today. Like you said, early on in that 7-on-7 period, offense looked pretty smooth. Hit Keon Coleman for a couple of receptions. I think we both noted it. A throw to Elijah Moore sort of down the sideline over the head of Tre'davious White. Maybe a little bit of a push-off from Elijah Moore, but something that they're not going to really flag down in the practice. Still a nice play for Moore to come down with the catch. So maybe starting to see a few glimpses of what this offense could be, or at least where they want it to be going into training camp.
And I saw another play, Josh Palmer involved there. Later in the practice, an 11-on-11, I will say this, Bobby Babbage bringing the blitz, quick pass by Josh Allen off the hands of Khalil Shakir, Tre'davious White. I know we kind of said that he got beat a couple times, plucks it out of the air, goes the other direction. So the defense had a nice little comeback in the back end. And again, we always, when we discuss what we see out here, we know it's practice. It's not physical. There's no pads. There's no anything like that. But you just kind of pick and pluck some things that are noteworthy, especially when Josh Allen, the MVP, isn't as finely tuned with a new group of receivers like an Elijah Moore and a Josh Palmer as we're accustomed to.
No, and it's just little notes that more so add context into the whole story of the offseason, right? You're not going to make a big deal out of one rep, one practice, one day in the offseason. But it's just sort of things that you piece together in context, and then when you start to head into, because after tomorrow, they're off for a break, and then it's Rochester for training camp, right? And that's where you really start to sort of pick apart each day and what you're gathering from each day. So, again, not to make too much out of one single day, but I think if you're Joe Brady in the offense, you like to see sort of a bounce back day after day one.
We've talked about Keon Coleman more than simply just one day this offseason, between Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott's comments actually on multiple moments through the combine, and other times we've spoken with them through the offseason. Now finally hearing from Keon here following practice. I'll just say from the jump, that amazingly polarizing and engaging personality that we saw from the very jump with the yellow coat and all of that, it was maybe as present as I remember seeing it. We didn't see it as much in the back end, and obviously he was dealing with injuries and trying to get back into things. The thing that jumped out to me from what he said after practice was his evaluation. One, he put on weight because he just wanted to. He said he got some extra bulk on. It's noticeable. Number two, I watched the film, I as in Keon Coleman. It's either I did it right or I did it wrong. I'm not looking for, okay, I didn't do this, but I got to do this. Very, very aware and critical of what his game was a year ago, and I think that's only going to translate back onto the field year 2.
And I want to ask you, as someone who's sitting there listening to him, I want to get your thoughts on this, because to me it's the comfort level, the maturity of a guy entering a second year in the NFL. It's one of those things where you talk with a lot of these rookies, and then when they're back here for a year 2 or year 3, they talk about it's almost like drinking water out of a fire hose, right? That first year, you don't really know what you don't know, right? So then you come back for a second season, you have a full offseason, you can, like Keon did, go back, watch the film, and maybe that's something that maybe allows him to feel more comfortable and maybe letting out a little bit more of that personality, not with the pressure of like, hey, I'm struggling to fight to meet these expectations of the highest drafted rookie on the team this year. Now he's just sort of part of the team, right, and in a better position to contribute. I wonder if you think that maybe helps contribute to maybe seeing a little bit more of that personality and him feeling a little bit more confident on the field as well, maybe.
100%. I mean, it was a barrage of the viral moments with the cookies and the coat right off the jump, and I think that a lot of the attention around him, not that he was asking for it, was about everything except for football. And then we finally get to the football field. We see things trending upward. Then he deals with the injury. And it just, as Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott made abundantly clear, after the injury, he was not the same player and never got to the level they wanted to, and in turn he wanted to. I think now things are a fresh slate here. He's had the full off season, all of this out here. And amazingly enough, if you look at that wide receiver group, he's kind of like a vet now. I mean, Curtis Samuel's another guy. It's only his second year. Khalil Shakir's been in there. Beyond that, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, these are guys that have not been around. Sure, Tyrell Shavers is maybe more seasoned in terms of his experience with the roster, but that guy's not going to make the 53 in all likelihood here. So I think Keon's settling in to his place on this team. And again, you're seeing it. Even in this setting here with just shorts and a T-shirt and a helmet, you're seeing plays being made from him working with Josh Allen.
And it's something to where you see that sort of comfortability on the field, and you look at the dynamic and the depth chart at receiver. Khalil Shakir is, I think we know that not the number one, but the number one, right, in the slot. Like, he figures to get the most amount of targets this season. But then you look elsewhere, and it's like, not necessarily by default, but Keon's position and what he brings to the team, you see like a realistic path to where you look back in January at the regular season stats, and Keon Coleman is the second most targeted receiver on this team, maybe the most yards or touchdowns on this team. And I think the work he's put in the offseason in terms of building his body is really helping to maybe help prepare him for that sort of role.
Let's go over to the defensive side of things, where you were spending most of your time this afternoon, especially the individual portion. And I want to talk about a guy that we haven't really talked about, kind of amazingly enough. That's Matt Milano. Bill's reworking that contract now. This is the final year of his deal, a prove-it year for a guy where health is really the biggest question. What are you seeing from him physically, watching him move out there as we approach the end of mandatory minicamp?
It's interesting because Matt Milano is such an important piece for this team, and since he doesn't talk a lot, we don't talk about what he has to say and everything, so maybe he's almost easy to forget about sometimes. I think back to a couple of years ago when I first started covering the team, and he came out hot out the gate those first 4 or 5 weeks, had I think a great interception, I think, against the Raiders at home, like an incredible play. Had a big-time game against the Jets, I think, to open that season. And you sort of saw, man, is Matt Milano on his way to another all-pro season? Then he gets injured, and then from there we know his injury history. Comes back towards the end of last season, and he's not the Matt Milano that we're used to. But it's hard to come back in the middle of the season after not playing for over a year and sort of get back to that level. Now he enters this offseason in a position where he's not having to rehab any sort of injury. He's sort of back. He knows the playbook, obviously. He can sort of focus on himself and getting himself overall to a certain level. And I think we're sort of seeing that kind of here in this offseason, watching him in those drills with Terrell Bernard, just fluidity and not, I guess, questioning any sort of movement. He just looks, I say this now about it, he looks sort of like another guy, in the sense that, like, another guy who's healthy, kind of going through the drills, okay, a coaching point here or there, but there's not the focus on the rehab of a specific injury. And I think that's so big, both physically and mentally for him. And I think it should be exciting for Bills fans, because here you have these two great linebackers in Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, and they've played X amount of seasons now with the team, but how many games have you seen both of them together fully healthy? You haven't really seen it that much, if at all, right? So I think that's one of the exciting things about this Bills team as they enter the 2025 season, is if you get a fully healthy season of Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, what does that do? What does that look like for this Bills defense?
Milano's best games since his injuries were, as the season was coming to an end, you could argue Kansas City was the best we saw from him in the AFC Championship game. So maybe that's a little light there, but the Bills, that contract situation, they're doing it on purpose, because you also have a guy, Dorian Williams, who we've heard, Bobby Babbage, and as recently as yesterday, Sean McDermott, give some high praise to. It's all about really just him furthering his development in processing on the field. I think they may reach a point with some flexibility and versatility. You might see Dorian Williams play his way onto the field, not necessarily in place of Matt Milano, but maybe as a more three linebacker type setting, which some teams may force him into.
Well, and that's something I think where we've talked about the flexibility of the Bills offense and not just picking up where you left off last year, and so doing some different things schematically. Who's to say that that's not something that the Bills look at with the personnel, maybe switching up the defensive fronts that they play, and in turn saying, hey, if putting our best 11 on the field means that we're putting three linebackers on the field at a given moment, especially if Matt Milano's fully healthy and playing like Matt Milano, why not, right? I know that's a difficult decision with, does that mean you have to take Taron Johnson off the field in certain situations? But these are all smart defensive minds in Bobby Babbage and Sean McDermott. They know what they're doing. And I think I agree with you. If Matt Milano returns to a certain level and Dorian Williams continues his ascent, I think Dorian Williams is going to sort of force their hand in saying, hey, there's going to be certain situations where not only do we think this might be the right move, but we feel more comfortable going with this three linebacker set because of the growth that we've seen out of Dorian Williams.
We'll wrap it up on this. Injuries kind of still where they were the day before. No Connor McGovern, Joey Bosa, no Cole Bishop, no DeMar Hamlin, but they're around.
Yeah.
They're not just simply sitting on the sidelines. They're working a little bit with the training staff. They are kind of being part of some of the install portions of things. So you can kind of see that they're not just on the side, and it also makes it far more encouraging that when Sean McDermott says the expectation is everyone will be ready to go at the start of training camp in late July, based upon what we're seeing in very small little snippets here, I think that we can feel optimistic at that. Other people that were here today, Terry and Kim Pagula, as well as the Sabres hierarchy of Kevin Adams and Jarmo Kekalainen. I'm getting pretty good at saying that, which is good. The Sabres are actually going to hold their draft here because the NHL shifting things away from everyone being on location, which is Los Angeles for the NHL draft this year, to doing it at their home bases. Well, the Sabres don't currently have a facility like a war room like the Bills do. So Kevin Adams and company will actually do the draft here from One Bills Drive. Us media members will be in the familiar media room at One Bills Drive as the NHL draft takes place at the end of the month. So it's just interesting, the One Buffalo thing, just kind of seeing everyone out here. Also, former Bills Pro Bowl linebacker, pass rusher, Lorenzo Alexander in the house as well.
One thing quickly going back to the injuries. Injured guys off to the side doing work. One guy that we heard about when he was drafted was Dion Walker about, hey, the team might look to bring him back slowly with the hopes of him sort of being full go for training camp as he sort of comes back from that back injury. I think we've seen him do a lot. In the individual portions, doesn't seem like he's being held back. I think we've seen him in there in sort of some of the defense against offense type settings too. Looks like he's moving like fairly well, getting praise after certain reps from the coaches. So I think that's an encouraging sign where you're not hearing mandatory minicamp and the team is saying, oh, we still have to hold him back a little bit. We want to play it safe with him, make sure he's full go in training camp. I think you're seeing good progress out of him so far in the time he's been here in Buffalo.
One more day of mandatory minicamp Thursday. In years past, I would have said they're going to cancel it. They did not last year, and my feeling is that because they're losing a week of OTAs, we will be here again on Thursday to wrap things up. Of course, we'll bring you all the coverage as well. With Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.